Let's jump right into it. So how we set up a GitHub action workflow is we need to create a new folder here called .github, and then within that we need to create a folder called workflows, and within workflow whatever YAML file you mention, that's going to be run within your GitHub workflow actions. So let's just populate this file. Yeah, so let me walk you through this. So what this does is every time there is a push, as you can see on push to the branch main, this is the job we run, right? And this runs on an Ubuntu machine within GitHub. So there would be, every time we make a push on an Ubuntu machine hosted on GitHub servers, this would be run. And here we use a GitHub Actions image called Apple Boy SSH action that makes it super simple for us to deploy code from GitHub to a server. So essentially what this would be doing is we'd be setting up a pair of SSH keys, a new pair of SSH keys we'd be generating just for this workflow, and we'd be getting private keys, SSH private keys of the newly generated key. We'll be storing that within GitHub secrets. I'll be showing you how, and we'll be mentioning our IP address of the server as well as the user, right? And we would be running the script. Now, what this script does is very simple. It just logs into the server and it creates a folder called GitHub pipeline, right? And then it moves into the folder and we clone our repository, which I'll be pushing this to a private GitHub repository, and then we would be let me just change the name. Yeah, then we'd be moving within the new folder, and we'd be checking out to main, just making sure everything is up to date, right? And then we'd be running whatever commands we used to run earlier manually. We'd be automating those so that we just have one simple flow. Every time there's a push, these commands get run. And of course, you can further optimize these. I'm just for the sake of simplicity, I'm keeping it this way. And at the end of it, our application should get deployed successfully. So I have set up a GitHub repository and I have pushed this repository there. So please make sure that you include a gitignore file where you exclude your .venv and any PyCache folders. We don't need those on our repos, they'll be simply consuming space. Now let's look at how we can go about setting up our SSH keys for this workflow. So like I showed you earlier, let's create another set of SSH key pairs. Now this one we're going to call FastAPI GitHub deploy, right? And that's been created for us. Now we go to our GitHub repository. As you can see, I've called mine FastAPI deploy. We need to go to settings, and here we would be adding to secrets and variables within actions. We would be adding these three variables: SSH host, SSH key, SSH username. So let me show you how that is done. SSH host would be my IP address. SSH username would be my name. And your SSH key would be the private key. To generate your private keys, to copy it, you would be the same pv copy command, and you'd be just entering the path to your key, except earlier we were including pub gives you the public key, remove .pub, you just get the private key. So you copy that and you paste it here. I won't be showing you mine since it's supposed to be kept private. And once you save, there you go, we should have all three of our keys. Now, like we did for our local machine to be able to access our server, in order for GitHub Actions to be able to access your server, we need to add our public key as well to the metadata. So we're going to do the same thing, go to metadata, we're going to edit, add item, and just go here, and likewise we're just going to change this to Piyush, remove whatever else was there. So the last word should be your username, server username, and we save that. There you go. Now we have two sets of keys, one for your local machine to access the server, and second for GitHub servers to be able to access your server and deploy code there. Now there's one more important step we need to do. So if you look at our code here, there is a step where we are cloning things. We're cloning the code from my GitHub repository, right? From, or in case your GitHub repository. So to be able to do that, we need to set up SSH keys, right? So we need a pair of SSH keys that are generated on the server, which would be able to pull code or clone code from here. So how we do that is we'd be going to settings, deploy keys, and we would be adding a deploy key here. And we are going to be generating those keys in our server. So let's go back to the terminal where we were logged into our server. Let's just go and stop the container from there. Let's just go to home, and we are just going to use the SSH keygen command to generate our new set of pair of keys. As you can see, I'm going to call mine GitHub deploy. Again, let's leave the passphrase empty. Now let's copy our public key from here. .pub. Again, we need the public key. So let's just copy this and paste it here. Let's call it GCP deploy keys. And there you go. We have added our keys. Now, before we can start testing our entire automated CI/CD flow, there's one more small thing we need to do. So remember the GitHub deploy keys we set up back then earlier. So this basically is used by our server to pull whatever latest code on every push. So to be able to successfully do that, according to this article by GitHub, we need to add a config file as well, right? So how we do that is, let's just follow the instructions. We need to create a SSH config file. Within a SSH folder, we need to create a file called .config. Then let's open that file and let's copy this piece of code here. So what this is basically saying is, every time we're trying to connect to github.com, we need to add keys to the agent. So what add keys to agent means is there is an SSH agent process running on the server. So we need to add the keys to that process so that it can get indexed every time we're just running the SSH command. And we need to specify our identity file, which means our private key. So it should be GitHub deploy. Do note that we aren't using .pub, we're using the private key, so it's just GitHub deploy. Now let's just save this. Okay, and let's go back to our application. Let's go to main.py. Now we're going to make a small change here. Let's make it hello world again, and I'm going to push this, commit this, and push this code. Now, on pushing, if everything went well, we should have our whole deployment running. So the moment we push, the whole flow should get executed. And on the IP address of our server at the route /docs, we should be able to see this hello world again response. So let's go and see if that happens. Now, if we go and inspect at our actions, we see the job has completed correctly. If we actually inspect the logs, we should expect to see a few errors since our script is not optimized. We have a lot of redundancy built in there. But as you can see here, our container should be started, and we should be able to see at our IP address of the container of the server, we should be able to see it live. As you can see, we are able to reach the docs. Let's hit the API. Let's try it out. And if we see hello world again to this, it means we've succeeded. Let's execute. And yes, we have. So to summarize, what we did was we first installed a FastAPI application, we Dockerized it, we set up a virtual machine server, we set up SSH keys to access it, and then we did a local machine to the server deployment using SCP. We just copied the files there, we installed Docker on the server, and we ran it and we checked it out to get the response. We were getting that. And then we decided that that was too cumbersome to keep doing continuously. So we set up a CI/CD pipeline using GitHub Actions. Now you can practically replicate this flow for any virtual machine on any cloud provider, maybe AWS, DigitalOcean, Heroku. Only probably the only thing that would be changing is this step where you'd be setting up the VM. Rest everything else should remain as it is. Thank you for watching this. Stay tuned for more such videos.